Dirk, AI-powered target costing. Over to you. Check your mobile phones off, and I'll leave it to you. Thank you. Dirk Karl, everybody.
Good morning. It's the second time being on stage here for Procurement Live, as I was there last year or the year before. You will also recognize one common slide, which is the block chart later on. There is a bit of animation and videos in the presentation, so bear with me. There might be some kind of latency coming up on experience in terms of the slide deck. But making this more a global event as well, coming from Dubai, of course, I'm going to show you something which is a bit of a paradigm challenger. A paradigm challenger, I'm saying, because we do program our own code. So when I present a more strategic sourcing use case, agentic AI, it's our code. We figured out in terms of our procurement library, use case library. It's bringing a big value to us in terms of target costing, cost engineering. If you have an automotive background, of course, you will also see the target costing should cost recommendation by this agent in AI. And you have seen from one of my competitors as well, how field management services can be optimized, how supply chain warehousing, because of the weather channel for radio sites across the countries, can be optimized in terms of working capital with AI. But this goes more into not supply chain, this goes more into really strategic sourcing when we call up the cost engineering target costing part. Let's get started, and at the end, feel free, Q&A-wise, I'll take the question. But specifically, I want to get you powered here up in terms of we develop our own code, so we don't use COTS packages for it. The data doesn't leave our organization, but we use, of course, a Copilot creation, Streamlit, in terms of our UI, and you will see we have an automation, of course, and we do have an enrichment through agentic AI agents. Target costing, introduction of MTN, making it even more global than just Dubai and the Middle East. It is MTN as a telecommunication provider. If you look at the mobile subscriber amount, we almost have now 300 million mobile subscriber in 17 African markets, covering it. So quite large. It's the 6th or 7th biggest carrier worldwide. And we are quite young still, 30 years, 1994, founded in South Africa and covering telecommunication with a purpose in Africa that we want to have financial inclusion and the people, of course, also connected in terms of enjoying digital life. Mobile, of course, as well. A leapfrog jump instead of fixed line and aerial cables. A big, vast amount is being covered through broadband, through mobile. What I mentioned before, 2 years ago, I came already with this block chart. And the block chart is aiming at feeding our use case libraries, what use cases we want to program, which use cases we wanted to automate, and what use cases are bringing value to us next. And you look at the yellow charts, of course, in terms of advanced negotiation, it's all more from efficiency and automation to AI usage in terms of strategic sourcing. So it's the change from efficiency to effective decision making, and that on an ongoing basis. And today we will be focusing more on the should cost modeling, the cost engineering, the cost saving initiatives that are getting supported out of that sort of insight. But this is always guiding us in terms of this AI native procurement organization where we are getting our use cases out of this block chart since 2 years. Now, deep dive. And one of my colleagues in the organization talks about brain procurement. He has branded that as brain procurement. Of course, you see a lot about e-sourcing out there with package providers, software companies. And you see a lot about contract management, spend analytics, supported by AI. You see e-sourcing, automation, that RFXs are being sent automatically, the BAFUs are coming in, the presentation is being prepared, all that sort of automation. But bear with me, this is, to my opinion, very low complex. And we need to move on in showing benefits on the side of not efficiency, but on the side of being effective, data-driven decision-making, core to our discipline in terms of also sourcing decisions. And that's why I picked a use case to present. You will see it. It's enriched by agentic AI. It's enriched because it takes internal knowledge out of it. It takes external sources in. And you know that the telco industry, when you look at the radio side, has a lot of chipsets, right? So we were already 8 years ago very much challenged by sanctions, by entity listing, by having the knowledge about what chipsets are being used, getting it into the markets, the minimus rule being applied to have a compliance across the Middle East as well as Africa, how we import those chipsets. And you might have also just seen the note that South Africa has been getting a warning as well in terms of chipsets import by TSMC last night. And I've picked a use case here, and that's the cost modeling. That's cost savings identifications, because market trends, raw material prices change, and they all have to do, of course, with the motherboards. And telco, in terms of the innovation that you see on the mobile side, of course, this wave of 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and now we're developing R&D-wise 6G with the vendors. There is a lot of change, lifecycle management-wise, occurring in our technology stacks. And those stacks are occurring, of course, with a remote side, a mobile side, at the tower. And we always been talking about this in terms of price increases. A new version is motherboard-wise, a new baseband version is popping up every half a year out of China, out of Europe, out of the US. And of course, it comes with power savings, it comes with more capabilities, power output, compute, new functionalities and features, of course, and it always comes with a different price tag that you have negotiated. And that sort of life cycle management we wanted also to capture in keeping, first of all, the vendors honest what has really changed on that motherboard when we see it, and can also be applied to the racks in IT. Fast to detect what kind of production synergies have occurred, what kind of less usage of raw material is being used, in order to challenge with target costing, of course, the vendor that comes in, and convincing the business partners about the new capabilities of that version. Let's move on, and you see a prompt right here with AI native procurement schematic. You see it here in terms of the prompt comes now up. We have the workflow, of course, with agents, and we have also the enrichment, and that's the use case I was talking about in terms of target costing, in terms of enrichment of data from raw material, price curves, indices, as well as the knowledge where these components of the motherboards are coming from, which vendors, identification of the serial number. And I give you now a bit of a video animation in terms of how that works for us. And keep in mind, it's not COTS, it's our own data lake underneath that would tackle now for a category manager the lifecycle management, in terms of he has now capabilities and information to challenge the new version that's going to be deployed on site. It gives us raw material insights, so what material is being used. It gives you a BOQ, bill of material list, of course, in detail. It gives you the various enrichments in terms of cost drivers in our own database, but also what the market is doing. And this is something you have with devices, you have, of course, with CPEs, routers, and also with the mobile technology. And then the cost engineering, you do not want to give up, let's say, their sort of productivity gains by releasing the new version. It could be less chipsets because chipsets are more powerful. It could be less material being used because of the power savings. And you want to gain that as well in the negotiation, assisted by this agent in giving you and the category manager in these negotiations the capabilities to challenge the vendor. And it's not just 20 or 10%, 15% or 30% uplift. Now, we're talking about price erosion, and that price erosion can be then sustained. Today, 2025, I've just been out of coming back from China last week. You know that the capacities of when you are in consumer electronics, in the handsets, the Apple phones, the launch, etc., and also in IT compute, memory chipsets are increasing by 14% on average worldwide. 80% of those memory chipsets are being produced by Samsung, 80%. There was a big decrease, price erosion last year in 2024 on memory chipsets. Boring, of course, not so technically advanced. And Samsung basically decided to get rid of a lot of those test capacities, right? In order to shrink the market, in order to bring the prices back up. And 2025, it's 14% up. So also those things, indices, raw material price changes, or this kind of buyer-seller market assessment is coming through the cost engineering. Now let's go to how that works in our environment. I've taken a motherboard from a radio site, remote radio head. Tower, of course, where you see those remote radio heads being deployed. And this is one of those motherboards that you see. Will take a screenshot, a high-resolution picture, and break it up in terms of where the various circuits are and chipsets. And it's reading it out in terms of two algorithms are working in parallel because there might always be some misses, some inconsistencies, some misjudgments. And of course, then we also get confronted a lot with category management and strategic sourcing. Ultimately, at the end, when there is a standoff between the two algorithms, there is human involved, right? There is human involved in terms of looking into those discrepancies and, of course, also overriding. But there you can see we upload the picture into our software. It's recognizing the chipsets. It's running immediately the scan on those pictures. The two algorithms are matching, and it comes up with the bill of material. This is automation. Optical character recognition, this is optimization. But it gives us also with the BOQ a lot of insights because of Scope 3, ESG, because of sanctions, of course, the sources where those chipsets and electronic components are sourced from. It gives us an acknowledgement also what was the past motherboard and what is the change of today being presented. And of course also, let's say, it gives us the sub-supply chain insights where the manufacturing is sourcing this. It reads out the serial numbers. It reads out the components, and now the enrichment occurs. And that's the agentic AI use case I wanted to present to you today. It enriches and brings up the bill of quantity, but it also brings up automatically the detection what manufacturer has been chosen for this. It also describes, let's say, the function on the motherboard, and it also enriches it with market pricing, that we are getting more out of the pilot, create a environment of the large language model, but also we have an own cost database of previous pricing on those components when we have a match done. This is the enrichment. This is the AI, agentic AI use case for what we are using it. And now the analysis that also comes part is break it down into cost structures, right? And this is then the evolution to a series of cost structures before, where we know what has actually occurred in terms of innovation, production engineering, in terms of the various cost blocks. So did the power management has majorly changed? Did they invest more into power savings? Or is the digital processing unit the part in terms of more performance on the motherboard that has increased some of those cost drivers? So those structures over time give us a lot of, let's say, levers in order to discuss the new price book with the vendors on those technology purchases. Now, when you look up in terms of forecasting as well, and that's where I think brain procurement, what we label it at the moment as brain procurement, is giving us not just, let's say, efficiency automation. No, we are going into use cases that are based and originated in strategic sourcing, target costing, a more innovative part in terms of the should cost discussion, and the agentic AI basically presenting nothing else than a category manager, right? That's the job of the category manager. To come up, first of all, with forecasting what are price trends, what is the evolution at the moment in the market, is a buyer or a seller market when I pick on the memory side in terms of having those trends uploaded as well. And that's the key in terms of a bit of a differentiation, why you need that practice maybe in your own organization, why you need to code, and why you also at least need to own the data. Because what we upload as well on this is, of course, our radio technology category management plan in terms of when do we have bundles, when do we have demand, when we have peaks of demand of purchases, when it needs to be negotiated, when that product as a life cycle wise joins the new price book at which price, how you're going to contract price erosion in terms of productivity gains of the vendors with the new evolution. Where do you see supply chain risk in terms of where are they sourcing it from, which kind of a sub-supply vendor? And it gives us, of course, in the risk management mapping, of course, as well, it gives us alternatives and it gives us insight for ESG Scope 3, what kind of sub-suppliers need to be approached in terms of ESG commitments. And then also supply chain risk management, of course, supply chain shortages, etc. Where are those vendors having a shortage? Flash memory drives as well. So next step, powered by agentic AI. I think we have covered it now in terms of category management and own data, because I think when you take a software package, of course, and there are various out there, please keep in mind, you have a category plan, you need to have the behavior modeling done on your own data, on your own footprint with an own data lake. You need to own this, and you need, even with a negotiation bot as an agentic AI use case as well. I mean, I've seen software packages that ask me 10 questions about the category plan, right? And then stages an ERA automatically to run the negotiation automatically with the vendors. Yeah, but a category plan that has a forecast of 3 years evolution, right, is not done in 10 questions, right? So that's what we have noticed, and that's why we are doing this in-house development. We are reading out all the information with our large language model, all the information out of the category planning, and put that in to be considered in the negotiation. So it's behavior modeling on your own data and your own insights to drive the decisions. And that brings me to the Q&A. So a real use case in terms of motherboard, very complex, gives a lot of side results as well in terms of supply chain, risk management, market trends in terms of evolution on the sub-supplier components, and also in terms of compliance, export regulations in terms of chipsets. I am opening up the floor for questions. Please. London calling.
We have one online. One's come through online, and it actually speaks to, it is very similar to a question we had yesterday. And clearly you have a very advanced use of AI. The question talks about governance. Who's accountable for its decision making? And I think someone yesterday, building on that question, was suggesting to me afterwards that there's a lot of chief procurement officers out there very worried that they're going to end up in court for something that AI does on their behalf. So what's your governance model? How have you addressed that, is the question. Good luck.
Yes. Of course, we have a compliance function, and of course, there's a bias analysis as well. But what we also have, of course, in-house is not only, let's say, the ring fence of our own data that doesn't goes out. So that's a part of the governance. But we also know our own algorithm. We program that algorithm, right? That AI algorithm. So if it's an automation agent or if it's an agentic AI agent, we do have the source code, we have the audit trails, etc. And as I described even in this automation example, there could be a standoff between the two algorithms, and there needs to be a human involved in terms of a category manager that makes the trade-off on any inconsistency that is being detected on the motherboard.
Hi, Tim Lawrence from Digital Catapult. Really interesting to see how you're using AI for the cost engineering elements, yeah? Have you tried any other categories other than the sort of motherboard type things? And does it get harder when you get into things that are less sort of standardized in terms of what you're trying to do? And also, secondly, software. I mean, obviously the costs of software is significant in your sort of sector and industry. Yeah? Have you tried anything like this with software categories?
Yes. I give you a bit of a ratio in terms of TCO split, right? That hardware part for us in a TCO is 40% of the full cost base, of the full TCO. When you're talking about software, yes, a major chunk, it's about 20% of software releases. But you know, DevOps and object orientation, and now our code of today, our IT world of today, data points are long gone. To translate that in FTEs or man hours, impossible. Impossible. I think that the motherboards, IT racks, LAN switches, compute, radio technology in the telco transport and transmission is quite a major chunk, and it has been very complex. Yeah? This is where we had the bottlenecks in terms of supply chain crisis after COVID, right? We had it on chipsets. We were not expert in chipsets when the sanctions were released on Chinese in terms of which nanometers they are allowed to get in terms of ASML machines and lithography, right? We were not there. We have gotten now the knowledge. We're very detailed, so it's a very complex use case, not an easy use case. Of course, there are other things in terms of services as well, in terms of how you have, in terms of a deal dynamics, what we call assistance on services RFPs, because services take for us 30% of the TCO. Right, so 20% is software, 30% is services, and 30 to 40% is the hardware invest in radio. So we do services. We break them down, of course, in terms of manpower. We are trying to establishing points in terms of man efforts, and that's the next use case. But definitely this one is more than just warehousing, weather channels, fuzzy logic, and saying, oh, I have a storm in one country and I need to increase my spare parts in the warehouse because some of the radio sites are failing. I've seen some colleagues talking about AI. This is really enrichment and target costing, as you know, in procurement, who is leading in target costing. It's automotive with the platform thinking, the should cost, and challenging the vendors with the should cost target. More questions? There are two here.
So my question is, what you're saying that it's applicable for all standard product. If this is non-standard, then how this, you're costing this work? Standard product means you say this service, fine. If this is technology service, so in that category we can standardize. But we procure a lot of non-standard product and service. So how you can estimate it in that by AI costing?
Yeah, but target costing, even a car or a Tesla, right, has standard components. This has also standard components. Yeah, even if the
I'm
chipset.
talking about non-standard.
Yeah, but give me an example for non-standard.
Non-standard means, say, particularly when we go for digitalization, is based on the requirement of this particular organization. They design, they want this.
Got it. That's what I've tried to explain in terms of non-standard, in terms of services, which are more customized, right, in terms of their efforts. And we are breaking down, of course, managed servicing offerings, even with a hyperscaler offering, into efforts, into man efforts, into FTEs, trying to link it in order to build up a should cost as well. So that's non-standard. And then you have all the standards in terms of your long tail as well, which is more the automation, click, and forms, where AI out there is trying to help you. Two questions over here.
Thank you. Yeah. So I just wanted to understand, how do you ensure the accuracy of this data? Like, for instance, a lot of information will not be available inside the organization if you look at the various detailed cost structuring. So how do you ensure, and a lot of analytics will be built on that. So how do you ensure the accuracy of the data?
Two. One is we do have own knowledge in terms of what the should cost be in terms of those components. That's one part. And the second thing is we are feeding, of course, the large language model with sources where we buy the data. Yeah, we buy the data from service providers. We buy the data from analytical companies that do tear downs. We do also spare part management, right? And they do tear downs because of the repairs. Yeah, so used market knowledge as well in terms of price components. So that's the feed into the data lake. We have external and internal data. And discrepancies, as I said, if there would be a pricing discrepancy of both of the algorithms, we would then also have, of course, category management going and having a view on this in terms of trade-off. Other questions?
Just time for one quick question.
Oh, okay.
I'll try my best. Thanks, Dirk. That was fascinating. I'd love to know internally how you sold this to the board. Was it complicated? And how long did it take to get here?
Yeah, there are two elements for selling it to the board. The one is, of course, the success in terms of lifecycle management and managing the cost base on an ongoing basis. That's one part. The second is it's a long-term investment. We have started to hire data scientists 8 years ago. So when you look at the block chart and when you look at our procurement use case library, we have about, at the moment, 55 use cases. Not all are coded, not all are digitalized, digital at the moment, but this kind of investment has started very early. So 2017, we have started to bring into procurement excellence in my organization, data scientists, and they have grown. It goes even now further that any kind of COTS package that I had, even for spend analytics, is going to be getting replaced by own code. And then the business development as a sell to the board as well is services. Maybe someone wants to subscribe to it as an external partner. And we have those discussions. Thank you.
Dirk, thank you very much indeed. You've clearly gone a long way down that journey of implementing AI, further than perhaps many other companies by the sound of it. So thank you for sharing that detailed implementation. Dirk Karl from MTN, legendary.